All right, welcome back to another video. My name is Ian Major. I'm an entrepreneur, Bitcoin pleb, and all-around raging capitalist. And in today's video, I am excited to be bringing you your May 2021 monthly Bitcoin digest. Welcome back to all of you returning raging capitalists. For those of you who are new to the channel, welcome as well. It's fantastic to have you. I hope you enjoy today's video, and if you do, consider subscribing so that more of you out there can see the great content we're putting out on their quest to become financially sovereign, which is really the whole point of this channel. But we've got a ton to cover today. I'm going to go into some of the recent price action. Those of you who have watched these monthly digests know that the purpose of that is really not to make any kind of near-term price predictions, but rather just to provide context on what's happening so that you can be better educated, have more conviction in your quest to stack Bitcoin. So we'll go through some of that. We'll go through a kind of status update on the Taproot activation. So this is Bitcoin's kind of biggest software upgrade in multiple years since 2017. So very exciting stuff. We'll do a quick update on kind of miners and some interesting shifts that we're seeing there. And then finally, we'll wrap things up with a few fun tidbits around just general adoption and awareness. So with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump right in. So let's talk a little bit about what's been happening with the price. I think it is very safe to say here in May 2021 that we are in the midst of the bull cycle. You've got altcoins soaring to new heights. You've got any projects just kind of rocketing to the moon. Come rocket. I mean, it is an absolute kind of circus out there. You've got, people aping their life savings into Doge, which doesn't even have enough hash rate to protect the network from a 51% attack. And so it is literally an unsecured network. But who am I to judge? I am hugely supportive of people doing what they will and what they wish with their money. But it is important to kind of recognize the context that we're in. And so in this section of the video, let's pick apart some of the recent trends. I want to start with a thread from the always excellent William Clemente, who's been continuing to put out some really, really good kind of on-chain analysis, which, again, my intention with this section is not to try and predict any kind of near-term fluctuations, but just give folks the kind of story of what's happening underneath the hood. And so he's got this excellent thread that starts with Bitcoin bull market is far from over. Here is why. And so what he's starting with is, I'm just going to kind of go through each of these. For starters, Bitcoin tops are marked by increasingly parabolic price action until a blow-off top occurs and demand steps back. We're not seeing that really at all. And there's really the story of what's happened over the last month since my last digest is this kind of continuation of a very large consolidation around this kind of mid 55K price range for Bitcoin. Consolidation just meaning that there's a kind of equal balance of selling and buying occurring, which if that continues in volume, that tends to provide a really kind of strong level of support. And so if we zoom into this this graphic, this is showing the UTXO realized price distribution, or URPD. Again, a UTXO is just an unspent transaction output, meaning it's just kind of Bitcoin sitting in a wallet. And the realized price distribution is essentially showing us where these various coins have last moved in terms of price. And so you can see that there's this huge kind of collection and consolidation around the 10K mark all the way on the left-hand side. And then you'll see there is, a growing kind of node of the distribution here on the right-hand side around this kind of mid 55 level. In prior videos, I've also drawn attention to the fact that that corresponds with roughly a $1 trillion market cap for Bitcoin. And so again, we're seeing a lot of really, strong consolidation around this mid 55 level. We would, every time I log into Twitter these days, you see someone else calling the top. And so that is another market signal that we are nowhere near the top. And so Will is describing that fact by the fact that we haven't seen this kind of really parabolic move that's indicative of prior cycles. He also goes on to say that, tops are also marked by spikes in dormancy or old coins being sold into kind of momentum and strength in the market. And in fact, if we look at the chart here, where in the orange you're seeing this kind of entity-adjusted dormancy flow, you're actually seeing that decline since February. And what this means, as Will is describing, is old holders are hodling, right? They're continuing to hodl. The next piece he looks at, is one of my personal favorite views. This is looking at illiquid supply change. As Will describes, and I think I would agree with him, that this is even more important than coins moving off exchanges, which folks will often point to as a sign of strength, right? Coins moving off exchanges mean, presumably, that folks are taking their Bitcoin, putting it into cold storage, and hodling for the rest of their days. Again, that's not what it has to mean when that happens. And so as he's saying, this is another really, really good measure. And so what we can see here is that the green bars are where you see an increasing illiquid supply. Illiquid meaning, essentially they haven't moved in quite some time. And so you can basically see that we are continuing to see, big clusters of addresses that are, simply increasing their kind of illiquid supply. So, we would really not expect to see this if we were truly near the top. He gets into some more kind of fancy, sophisticated, metrics here. The MVRV Z-score, which takes the ratio of market cap to realized cap, or as he says, the capitalization based on the price when the coins were last moved. Make some adjustments for volatility. Again, the point is, a lot of these different kind of metrics are far from their sort of cycle peaks, and in fact are seeing a kind of opposite trend that you would expect if we were truly near the top. This one, I think it's very interesting. He says, more food for thought. Each cycle tends to have these three distinctive peaks of supply being held by short-term market participants. So this is showing that realized capitalization. And essentially, he's just calling out that prior cycles have had three peaks in this metric. This one's a little more tenuous. I don't necessarily think that we would or should expect to see something as kind of nuanced as this each and every cycle. But it is an interesting sort of note to call out. And then, he concludes with, okay, so we'll fine, but who's selling? Because we've seen this consolidation, meaning that there's a sort of equal balance of selling activity as buying. Indeed, every time someone buys, there is someone selling on the other side. And so we can see that, this kind of entity adjusted ASOL, which is essentially showing the, the kind of tenure, if you will, of some of these participants. We're seeing that newer, inexperienced market participants are selling. So the average age of coins being sold has been steadily trending downward since February. And we can see that idea supported in OTC volume. So again, another one from William here is showing the total transfer volume from OTC desks. So over-the-counter desks are often where institutions who are buying Bitcoin will purchase from. And so as you can see, it's showing the line there is the price in US dollars, and then the kind of orange bars are the total transfer volumes. And so this is only looking over a very short time frame, as you can see in the x-axis. But what you're seeing is that, each kind of little dip in price, you see a commensurate kind of spike in OTC activity, which is a very strong indicator that it's institutions who are happily buying the proverbial dip. So again, a lot of a lot of kind of KPIs and measures we just went through there. I realize if these are, newer to folks, that probably would have felt, like a lot. But the point is, I'm going to link all of this, by the way, so you can kind of look into any of this more if you are so interested. But the kind of overall takeaway to this is that a lot of different kind of key fundamental measures, if you look at them, are really not displaying the behavior you would expect to see if we were truly at the sort of top of the cycle, as many market pundits are oddly calling. The kind of other interplay in all of this that's really interesting is Bitcoin dominance. And so this graphic from NYDIG is plotting out something called Bitcoin market cap dominance, basically the ratio of Bitcoin's market cap to that of the broader cryptocurrency universe. And that's plotted in this kind of black block here. And you can see that indeed most recently, this goes quite a ways back to 2014. If you go all the way to the right side of the chart, you can see that its dominance is dropping off quite fast. And a lot of folks will say, "Oh my gosh, what's happening?" But keep in mind, this is a very, very clear sign of the progression of the market cycle. If you go back to the last cycle, you can see in the green line there that kind of local top in about the middle of this graph. You can see that corresponds with essentially a local trough or bottom in Bitcoin dominance. And so this is very, very kind of indicative of the progression of the cycle. You sort of have this mid-cycle consolidation of Bitcoin where Bitcoin chills out, and then speculators fly into different altcoins, and indeed that's what we're seeing with the NFT craze, with Doge, with Cumrocket, with Shiba, anything and everything is sort of fair game to see. And so that's kind of an interesting view. But again, I'm not here to necessarily bash others, but I'm here to give you the facts. And one of those facts is that there is still nothing even remotely close when we compare hash rate across different blockchains. You can see Bitcoin here in the blue, and nothing else even registers on the map. And so hash rate is a good proxy for the security of the network. It's the amount of computation that is supporting the network and its security. And so there is just nothing even remotely close behind it. So with that, let's go ahead and switch gears to an update on the Taproot activation. And so if you've been watching the channel, you've probably seen in one of my prior videos, one of my prior digests actually, I go into Taproot, what is it? So I will link that in the description down below for you to take a look at. But just as a recap, Taproot is a set of upgrades to the Bitcoin software that are highly anticipated. These are the biggest upgrades that have that are being put through the deployment process since 2017. They promise to bring a number of key benefits to users, including increased privacy. So they're going to integrate Schnorr signatures, which are kind of cutting edge, signature techniques, and ultimately improve the privacy of some of the more complex types of transactions. So beyond just me sending, Bitcoin from me to someone else, think about multi-signature transactions where you have multiple parties who are signing a transaction to kind of prove collective ownership of those coins that are being spent. You also have smart contracts like time locks. So these coins have to, they can't be spent until a certain amount of time has passed or until we get to a certain kind of block height, et cetera, et cetera. And so what this is ultimately what this series of upgrades are doing is it's going to make these more complex transactions appear indistinguishable on the blockchain versus kind of a normal transaction. Why is that a good thing? Well, currently, if I'm making one of these more complex transactions and someone is able to kind of see that, they can make inferences about what maybe tools or apps I'm using to kind of do that. And all of that erodes privacy. It also plays into fungibility, which we'll kind of get into in a little bit, et cetera. So, privacy benefits, that's all very good. In doing that, in sort of making these more complex transactions indistinguishable from normal transactions, it's also going to, for those transactions, reduce the amount of data that's being sent in the blocks. And so that's a good thing as well. That's going to have an effect of lowering transaction fees, all things equal. It's going to provide just more flexibility for smart contracts as we go forward. It's also going to bring a lot of these benefits we've just talked about to the Lightning Network, which I'm going to do a whole kind of series on Lightning. But a lot of good stuff. But the other really interesting thing that I could probably do a whole standalone video on is just how these upgrades are kind of rolled out. So we've basically kicked off and started a 3-month window called Speedy Trial. And so this is a window in which miners are going to signal their kind of readiness and acceptance of the upgrades. And we can see that unfold actually if we go to this very handy website called taproot.watch. Again, I will link this in the description down below. But this is basically where you can see the signaling status of the Taproot upgrades. And basically how this works is there have to be 90% of the blocks across the kind of 2-week difficulty adjustment window. So roughly every 2 weeks, there's a difficulty adjustment that either makes it easier or harder to mine a block of Bitcoin, depending on how many miners are sort of there in the ecosystem. And so this 2 weeks just presents a kind of helpful window to judge the progress against. And so you can see in this current 2 weeks that's about to conclude, we're obviously not there yet. There's only about 34% of blocks that have signaled. By the way, if you're on Bitcoin Twitter, this is why you're seeing the green squares next to a lot of people's names. It is them sort of showing support for these upgrades. And so you might say, wow, that seems like a lot of, or a high percent of blocks that are not yet being sort of signaled. But again, part of this is likely just miners ensuring that, their equipment, their systems are all fully calibrated and set up to handle the upgrades. If you come over to this other tab on the page where it says mining pools, you can see that about 54% of mining pools have started to signal, including the 3 largest ones. So this is a very good sign. We're not there yet, but basically 90% of the blocks over a 2-week period have to be signaled. And if that is the case, then come November, Taproot will be automatically activated across the network. That's all I'm going to kind of say in this upgrade. If you're so inclined, I think Taproot is really interesting, both in terms of the updates that are actually happening, as well as how it happens, this sort of consensus process amongst open market participants. So really, really cool stuff. I'll put a number of links in the description down below, but there is your sort of Taproot upgrade for now. Let's go ahead and now move on to a related but different topic around miners. So I wanted to do just a quick note on miners, given what an influential role they play. Miners selling to cover operating costs is often a big driver of price declines. Miners are still, some of the biggest kind of active holders and sort of spenders and sellers of Bitcoin. One of the oft-made critiques of Bitcoin is its mining concentration in China, given the availability of cheap energy to power the Bitcoin mining rigs. And what's interesting is as this Cointelegraph article is making note, there are some signs that the hash rate or the computational power being put against the Bitcoin blockchain is actually starting to move slowly away from China. Ultimately, I think this is a good thing. It's important to note that full nodes are, which help verify transactions, which propagate transactions through the Bitcoin network. That's very, very decentralized. I mean, far more decentralized than any other cryptocurrency out there by far. But again, that's one participant in the ecosystem. Miners, which are essentially, special nodes, have tended to be concentrated in China. And so any sort of decentralization, I think, is a good thing. And, my sort of hypothesis for what's contributing to this is a pretty interesting company called Compass Mining. Again, none of these videos are sponsored in any way. I'm just kind of highlighting a player that's really kind of burst onto the scene in a bigger and bigger way. And so I'll link their website. I myself have been, learning a bit myself. I am by no means an expert, and so I don't want to speak out of turn here. But, their value proposition is, hey, let us take care of all the hard stuff as it relates to Bitcoin mining. And essentially what you're doing as an individual is buying the hardware and then paying the ongoing operating expenses, all while Compass will house that hardware in one of their secure facilities, take care of all the kind of infrastructure, setup, all that stuff. And so it's pretty interesting. And it's exciting to see. Again, any amount of decentralization is good, whether we're talking about the distribution of nodes or miners specifically. Let's now kind of close this video out with a few fun tidbits, and then we'll wrap the video up. All right, so I'll always try and sprinkle in some fun here at the end. A couple things that kind of caught my eye over these last couple days. One was Tom Brady, so many who consider to be the best American football player of all time, has gone laser eyes, so you'll love to see it. It is worth noting that he's also, I think, starting his own NFT company or something, so we shouldn't read his laser eyes as signaling that he's a Bitcoin maximalist, but you do have to give props to the guy, and it is very exciting to see. This also kind of continues to be a trend that you're seeing with athletes who are recognizing the benefits of the hardest money that has ever existed in mankind. The other one that has been flying around and caught my eye is Mark Zuckerberg. So this is actually a post from Facebook where he says, "My goats, Max and Bitcoin." Now, this one's a little bit cryptic. On its face, you might think, whoa, Mark Zuckerberg, he's a Bitcoiner. But keep in mind that he is known to raise these goats for meat. And so he might be saying that he's going to, kill and eat Bitcoin. So I would be thrilled to see him try. But again, no matter how you cut it, it's interesting visibility, and it'll go a long way in terms of awareness. So a couple fun tidbits to wrap this video out. Let's go ahead and now do the quick conclusion. All right, gang, so there you have it. We covered a lot of ground in this video. As always, we took a look at some of the kind of dynamics and fundamentals and on-chain metrics earlier that kind of show us this big consolidation that's happening around the mid 50K mark in terms of Bitcoin price. We saw how Bitcoin dominance is actually going down as folks ape into different altcoins. And that is very much to be expected and is what we've seen in prior cycles. And so, a lot of folks are bracing for the next big leg up in Bitcoin for this current cycle. That this kind of mid 55 range could ultimately prove to be, say, the bottom of the next cycle. Assuming that these cycles continue. There's equally valid arguments that this time is different, but we shall see. My current hypothesis is that we will see a bear market in 2022 and 2023, but it will be more muted and modest than we've seen in the past. That's my current base case, subject to change. We took a look at the Taproot activation status that has recently opened for signaling. And so we'll look at how that goes over the next 3 months. We also took a look at some of the kind of mining dynamics and how we're slowly starting to see some hash rate come out of China, which is good for the decentralization of Bitcoin. And then lastly, we took a look at Tom Brady and Mark Zuckerberg, donning their respective Bitcoin comments. So we'll leave this video here for now. I hope you found this useful. If you did, you already know what to do. Give this video a like, share it so more can kind of see the great content we're putting out each and every week. And hopefully all of this information around the Bitcoin universe can help you in your quest to become financially sovereign. That is what it's all about. But for now, we'll leave this video here. As always, every cent counts. And until next time, I'll see you then.